All set?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. It's 6 o'clock. I'll call our meeting to order. Rob, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Least.
Here.
Mrs. Sweet.
Here.
Mr. Bear.
Here.
Mr. Whitaker.
Here.
Mr. Avery.
Here.
Mr. Hannah.
Here.
We have all members of council present this evening, so if you would please join me in pledging allegiance to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And good evening, everyone. This is the regular session of the Enon Village Council. This is Tuesday, February 27th, 2024. Any additions to our agenda this evening?
Just a brief one under old business. It'd be a reference to the park.
Okay, Mr. Hannah, park info. Anybody else? All right, let's go into approval of meeting minutes. And I would like to just briefly bring to your attention the meeting on January 23rd. And I apologize, Rob, for not looking those over closer, but there is one addition that I would like to see if council would approve, and that was when we entered into executive session. That motion should have read to consider the employment, promotion, and compensation of a village employee. So I would like to see that added if the council concurs with that, just for the explanation.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll need a motion and a second to amend those.
So moved. Second.
And call the roll, please.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Ms. Least.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Those are, that amendment has been approved, so those are correct now. And let's go to Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. If council is satisfied with their contents, I'd entertain a motion and a second to approve.
So moved. Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Ms. Least.
Yes.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Those are approved as presented. We'll go into finances. Rob, I will turn that over to you.
Sure. The January reports were submitted at the last meeting, and at that time, we did not vote on them because I had hopes that the Auditor of State's office would update the software so that we could have the signature page printed with them. That did not happen. So if we would like to approve the January financials that were submitted last meeting, we can, or we can wait until the next meeting and approve them with February's.
What's the pleasure of council?
I'm good with going ahead and approving them. I mean, we already reviewed them last week, so I'll make a motion to approve the financial report for January.
A second.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Ms. Least.
Yes.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Okay, and those are approved as presented at the last meeting. So we'll see the hard copies at this meeting, or the next meeting, I mean.
We have hard copies already. But
Okay, gotcha.
there's a signature page that is to be printed with those reports.
For the reconciliation,
Yes.
gotcha.
But the software. has
What
really-
exactly is that problem with the software? Is it statewide? Is it,
Yes, so it's.
it's not just
they send out
particular to
updates.
Enon?
No, they send out updates, and they send out a year-end update, which if you remember in December was bad, and they had to do another one, which they did. And when they pushed that, they omitted that signature page from the reconciliation reports. And
Gotcha.
they're not gonna push out a patch solely for that until they do the bigger update, which should happen probably in March.
Okay.
Maybe April, but.
Gotcha.
So we just have to make up our own signature page is the only difference at the moment.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Before we get into our presentation this evening, I just want to publicly announce what most of us already know. Unfortunately, Mr. Hannah's father passed away yesterday. Rick, we want you to know that our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family. We know you're very close to your father, and we're thinking about you, and anything that your village family can do for you, please just let us know.
I appreciate that. He enjoyed his last couple of years in Enon, as he said.
Yeah.
our last World War II veterans still hanging in there. So it's a rough time right now, but we love you all and we appreciate it. So thank you.
Well, we're thinking about you. And I was remembering a few years ago, I had the pleasure of writing a letter to your father on his trip for honor flight. And that was a privilege for me to learn about his life and his service to the country. So
That was one of his highlights. And while we were up there, we got a picture with him and Bob Dole, who's a regular at the World War II monument. And so he additionally, he had taken care of my mom with Alzheimer's for an extended period of time. So he deserved extra years, and we're thankful that he did. And it's all okay.
please let us know if you need anything.
Thanks.
Okay, next on our agenda, we have a presentation. Mr. Gary Smith with G2 Planning and Design is going to just kind of give us a brief introduction. And actually, Kevin, I'm stealing your thunder. I'll let you do the introduction on it a little bit and kind of give a little background, if you would.
Yeah, Gary Smith with G2 Planning and Design from Columbus, Ohio. They were the planning and design firm for the Stein Road project. So we thought we'd kind of invite him back and briefly explain the project again and kind of go over a few things.
And the whole idea is just to see if there is any interest from the village in having any further discussions. I do want to make it clear there have been no plans submitted for anything. There's no plans, specific plans that are in the works. This is just simply for them to introduce themselves to council and see if we want to have any further discussions. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
Want me to come over and hang out with you?
Sure.
All right. we can keep this casual.
Must not have heard about Kevin.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Let me see if this actually works. Oh, there we go. Let's see here. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate that. I appreciate that introduction. And just to be clear, I really view this more as a conversation than a presentation. I'm not here to sell anything. I just really wanted to have an opportunity to kind of talk to the village. It's been 3 years now since we kind of went through and proposed that project. And, times, things change over time. And so it's probably worth having a discussion again, but not only really for me about that property, but also just about the village in general, kind of the village's appetite for growth, what the village's position is on, some of those different kind of things. Because, a lot of times for me, it helps to learn a little bit more about the village, at the same time that I'm looking at a particular piece of property, for a property owner. And Mr. Hanna, my condolences. I lost my father in 2018, and it still hurts. It just never goes away. But that's a pretty touching story about some of the experiences that he had. So, I appreciate that. Just from a general sense, I'm not sure how many people were on council at that point when we went through this 3 years ago, ultimately. But the project site is just down along Stein Road. I'm sure that a lot of you are familiar. It was in the news quite a bit, obviously. And so, you can kind of see its position in relationship to the village. The project itself was the site itself is kind of unique in that it's got a lot of road frontage. It's a very unique shape, which makes it somewhat challenging for a kind of a land planner and a designer to kind of figure out. But it's 42 acres. They actually own both sides of the road. The side that we had proposed the project on was 42 acres. We had proposed a planned development, and it was primarily single-family residential to kind of fit in and transition, because we have, single-family to the north of us, we have single-family to the east of us, and so ultimately what they proposed was a single-family project. this is kind of what we proposed initially, and this is kind of as far as we got. Ultimately, the county approved it. It went through the referendum process and it got turned over. And so, what we're trying to do ultimately is get a sense for, what are some of the options for the property moving forward. Is there anything, does the village have any interest in, potentially, seeing growth on this site as part of the village? Is the village interested in, future annexation at all? What would that look like? Or, if not this site, maybe where is the village interested in growing? So I just wanted to kind of open it up for a general discussion. We're really interested in just kind of finding out more, what the village's thoughts are. And, if there is something here that could move forward, fantastic. And if not, I certainly appreciate the time that everybody's given me this evening. I know your folks' time's precious. And so I'm really appreciative of the time that you're giving me here.
I was interested as mayor, not necessarily in the density that you had proposed originally, but I was interested in the project and interested in the potential for something new for Enon, something that might be attractive for younger families and older families as well. And we did have just a short discussion when you came out. Was that 2 years ago or three, however long ago it was? And Rick was involved in just, it's like, this is what our zoning says now. This is what we have on the books. And, is there a district that might fit the ideal development that the property owner has and also be conducive to the village?
Yeah.
And I understand that not everybody wants half-acre lots, but I also understand that quarter-acre lots are probably too small, just in general, for the Enon community. But, maybe something in between would be a possibility. Those are just my thoughts.
Yeah. And, all of those things I think are open to discussion. Part of the challenge that any developer has these days, ultimately, is trying to bring houses in that kind of fit within the overall kind of market, availability. If the prices are too high on the houses, they're not going to sell. And that's a tremendous amount of risk for any developer because if the houses don't sell, they've got a lot of money invested, interest is due and gets carried, just like you have on your home loan. If you don't pay your home loan, the interest rates still continue to rack up. So when they take out loans to build roads and extend sewers and those kind of things, the interest on that starts to come due right away, and so they really need to sell houses. So they really are very, very careful about how they move forward with the development, making sure that they're hitting the market kind of in the sweet spot. And I think that the challenging thing that's happened really over the last, just over the last 10 years, we've seen a lot of demographic changes. The whole country has, but Central Ohio is not unique in that the country, the baby boomers are getting older. They're all empty nesters. That's changed their housing preferences considerably. And they were a huge wave of folks. So you have a lot of people who are kind of hitting that retirement age. That's changing the housing market. You have a lot of family sizes are changing now, and housing preferences are changing now. And I'll tell you, a couple of people have done really good work on this, and I don't want you to necessarily take it from me. But there's a lot of really good research out there that you guys could take a look at. The BIA, the Building Industry Association, Central Ohio. If you go to the BIA, if you just Google BIA of Central Ohio, they have some good information on their website. They have a tab somewhere at the top for advocacy, and they have two things that they've done I think that are really interesting. They've done a full-on market study, and because it's the BIA of Central Ohio, they've really focused on the 10 counties kind of surrounding the city of Columbus. So we're, I think, a county removed from that boundary, but a lot of that really applies to most of the state, I think, what they came up with. And so they did a full-on market study, and I've even got some of that information here if you have questions about it. But they also had the Montrose Group, which is kind of an economic development consulting group, do kind of a white paper on housing policy. And one of the things that they focused on was how do we, right now, the whole Central Ohio area, and I think that really extends kind of to Dayton, Cincinnati, because Cincinnati's seeing a lot of the same growth. So this really is kind of a growth corridor. We're seeing a tremendous shortage of housing throughout the region. It's not just it's not just Enon. It's not unique to anybody, but in the Central Ohio region, because of all the growth, even in this quarter, because of the battery plant, Intel, all of the jobs that are coming, we are rapidly getting to a deficit in housing versus the jobs that are projected to come into into the state and into kind of the area, and that's ultimately leading to potential economic development challenges because companies are very, very sophisticated and kind of how they approach where they're going to locate. They want to be located near capital, and their capital is people. They are investing in people and employees. They want to know where their people are going to be able to live. They want to locate in areas where they've got kind of an educated workforce or population, depending on the company. They may need blue collar workforce, they may need an educated workforce. So they're very, very sophisticated in how they approach that. And part of the challenge is what we're experiencing all over the place. And I work for just about every major developer in Central Ohio. Is that right now they're forecasting, and Morpsey did some good work on. I don't know. Is anybody familiar with Morpsey? So Morpsey is the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. It's really focused on kind of the 7-county area around Central Ohio. But they've done kind of their own projections, and the whole area is really projected to grow by quite a number of people. But they projected that right now we're at about 20,000 housing units short of where we need to be, and we need to build 18,000 housing units a year just to keep up, and we're building about 13,000 housing units a year.
I'm sorry, Gary, what did you say the acronym was?
Morpsey, Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. Yep. And I got a study. They've got a 2050 study. I can actually forward a PDF copy to maybe just to Kevin.
Yeah, to Kevin. Sure.
Kevin can forward it to the group. It's got a really good information in it. I mean, I can share with you one on the page, and this gets back to the conversation about lot sizes, but this is it. So this is the Insight 2050 report, and this gets back to my discussion earlier. And please just stop me if you don't have time or if you feel like I'm rambling. But
I do have a question.
To me, this
though.
is fascinating stuff.
I apologize. I was not on council at the time, but
No,
I just
that's
want to
okay.
make sure. Is this the discussion of like it was like 100 houses talking about like half-acre lots or something? Is that kind of what? Okay.
I think
It
it's
was actually, I think, a total of
166?
166.
Something
Okay.
like that.
All right.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I was
155 or
thinking
something
of
like
the correct project.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Mark,
absolutely. And so
I'm sorry.
that's good. Go ahead. Do you have anything else?
Well, I was just going to ask if, it may have been brought up before, but like, have we talked about like the schools and the services? I mean, I'm not sure how far in depth we've even got.
We have not.
Okay.
Yeah, this is this kind of
gotten there.
Okay.
scratching the surface type of.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Mark?
But one of the things I guess that they found, and I'll just wrap this up because I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions, but there's a lot of good information in here. They talk a lot about kind of the changing profile of the future households and the growth. And so one of the things that they point out is that the majority of the growth now is not going to be kind of in that 4-person household. The majority of the growth is going to be in 1 or 2-person household, because a large portion of them are going to be empty nesters, and a large portion of people are going to be people who are just starting families. And that's really changing the housing preferences. And this is especially important. I think this is one of the things that you want to research when you talk about, there's 2 things. When you have a community like this, you always want to be able to have 2 things. You want people who have grown up here their entire lives have the opportunity to stay, but they may not need a bigger house anymore. They may not need they may not want to climb stairs. So, things like patio homes or homes that are really geared towards empty nesters become kind of important if people want to stay in the community that they've lived in, raise their family their entire life. The other thing for younger folks is a lot of younger folks can't necessarily afford a large house or, in some cases can't afford, a mortgage in general. So they really need places when they're starting out. Like if you want your kids to be able to live in the community, you need to have opportunities for them as well. They may not be able to afford the down payment for a mortgage or a new home. So they have completely different living needs. But if you look at some of these, and I'll send you this so you can read it for yourself, but you can see that a significant portion of the houses that we're going to need from demand aren't necessarily just the typical single-family house on 80-foot lots. And that's a majority of what most people's zoning codes are today. But if you look at a majority of what's being built across central Ohio, this is just something that the BIA put together over to kind of show you a difference in trends. So they go by lot sizes, and you can see. So in 2011, approximately 24%. We'll just go over into that half acre, that quarter acre to a half acre. About 24% of the market in 2011 was in that size, and about 12% of the market was half acre and larger lots. That in 2021 shrunk considerably. It shrank from 24% to 17% for the half acre lots and 12% to 8%. But you look at what happened to the 50-foot lots and the 60-foot lots, is the demand for those skyrocketed ultimately. And builders are kind of creatures of the market. They build product in where the buyer's going to buy. Go ahead.
Just so council's aware, when we were approached, there was nothing formal about that. So there wasn't anything other than a general conversation back and forth about if the village would be interested. At that point, it was a raw period after the referendum. So to try to carry it much further was going to be very delicate. This project itself has a similar sister or brother up in around Troy Pike and Route 40. So you see, matter of fact, Kevin and Tim and myself, Mayor myself went and observed some of these lots, because there's probably at least 3 different sized lots that that are similar to what you're projecting. Now, we had concerns on the smallest one because it was very, very tight. The other ones, we said, well, we could be not. It could be a good match. So the idea is out there. You see how that area has grown. The village itself, and if I'm speaking in general, is that there's sometimes not a lot of change liked, but we also have to understand that at some point the tax basis has to expand, because we can't really continue increasing taxes upon especially our elderly and our fixed income people. So what's the alternative? Annexation or a residential area. And the school I'm not sure about their situation, but I think part of the Enon Road project was to alleviate some of the water concerns when we went with
Right.
the heavy pipe, and the township would have their concern, I think, over on Sterling Drive. But respectfully, on my own behalf, I would be interested to hear a presentation again, if Mr. Hahn would so be willing to negotiate some on that aspect. And again, I'm speaking for myself. I don't want to speak for council, but
What I saw when we took that trip to, where was that at? Over by Tip
it was
Tip City?
it was on Troy at Route 40, so it's a Huber
So,
project.
so nice homes, nice neighborhoods. I got to actually talk to a couple people, and I said, these lots are smaller, they're not half acre. Tell me about living in these neighborhoods. And that's what they wanted. That's why they picked those smaller lots. Some of them, in my opinion, were way too small. Some of them were, it's like, okay, I can see you don't want a half acre lot. You're going to go something kind of in between. And they were relatively spaced enough that you would have a little bit of privacy, while some of those weren't. So that particular plat had a lot of mixed sizes in there, but they had sizes that would be like a compromise, if you will, that might be appealing to people that don't want the typical half acre lot.
And what we did as council, or not as council, but what we did that particular day was come back to us with a different plan, and it was really never followed up at that point. So it's not been any further conversation because it's not really been pertinent to anything
No.
that we've got directly in front of us.
Well, I think
So-
I think the timing wasn't exactly right, but Mayor, you bring up a good point. I think one of the things too that's also kind of different today versus the way that we used to build houses is if you look at just compare the two neighborhoods. So on the bottom in the blue is ultimately what we had proposed. On the top was the development that was done in the township. They're effectively the same density. So it's approximately the same number of houses in the same amount of area. But the thing you'll notice about the two is that because of all of the new regulations in terms of stormwater design, stormwater quality, and stormwater runoff, those kind of things, in the area in the yellow, there's zero common open space. There are zero retention basins. There are zero ponds. You can't build a subdivision like that today. So when you built that subdivision, it was possible to just put in lots and streets, and the lots could be bigger because you didn't have to sacrifice any area to open space or to stormwater retention and those kind of things. Now, because of the regulations and because of the costs just associated with the building materials and pavement and asphalt and concrete and sewer pipe and everything else, lots are trending smaller, but you're getting more open space. And so rather than, if you look at a lot of those lots, instead of having a neighbor directly in their backyard is open space. It's looking out on open space. And so they get more open space really where, they can gather as a community and, play with their kids versus everybody kind of being isolated in their backyard, and playing. And, so it's those kind of things that are driving how subdivisions are designed and built and permitted these days, and kind of the desirability, as you mentioned, Mayor. It's really a function of two things. It's people want to be in communities with more open space. They don't want to pay as much for a larger lot because there is a huge cost associated with that. If you think about it, just looking at the development itself, you have X number of street or X amount of street. You have sewers that have to run through there. Those costs don't change regardless of whether the lot's 50 feet or 80 feet. The only thing that changes is the share of those costs that each lot has to burden. So if you have 80-foot lots and you have 30% more, then those lots cost 30 to 40% more. And then therefore they get pushed out of the reach of a lot of folks who need to buy houses.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Yes or no question. Could that land potentially develop, once it would be potentially developed, and it will somewhere down the road, we don't know when, would that alleviate some of the remaining drainage problems that exist?
Oh,
Yes or-
yeah, yeah.
Yes or no, could it?
Well, we
or
had,
would-
I think when we actually went through the proposal, we had all that worked out.
So, yes.
Yeah, we
Okay.
had the engineering figured out, all of the stormwater that's coming from offsite and some of the stormwater that's currently coming into the backyards of some of those neighbors. All of that's going to have to be collected in the storm drainage system whenever that gets developed.
And coming across Enon Xenia, running onto the village side now, okay.
Yeah, all of that stuff has to, anything that gets developed, regardless of how it gets developed these days, regardless of what the subdivision look like, that would become the responsibility of the developer. They'd have to handle all that stormwater on site. They're not allowed to block any stormwater that's coming from off-site, so they have to accept that water. They have to move it into the storm drainage system. They have to retain all of their increase in stormwater. So, roofs,
Okay.
pavement, they all run off faster. So they've got to retain that so that the runoff isn't any faster than it is today as an undeveloped condition. So it really does improve flooding conditions
Okay.
considerably.
And Gary, let's do this. Let's take any kind of questions or comments that other council members may have at this
Sure.
time. If
Yeah,
anybody's got any
absolutely.
comments or questions.
I can only speak for myself. I'd be interested in hearing more and seeing more about it, but
The only thing I heard, and it was from multiple people, was it building that it's not going to match up with what Enon is. Who's going to want to live in a quarter-acre lot or smaller than a quarter-acre lot? Well, I think we've all seen all these neighborhoods being, they're popping up everywhere. I think that's where the nation's headed towards, which you touched on. And who am I to say you shouldn't want to live in a quarter-acre lot or smaller? People don't like taking care of yards. If they've got young kids, have stuff going on all the time, they don't have time to take care of half an acre. But
put a Buc-ee's in there and you've got it made.
all right.
There could be another consideration too, should a corporate facility in our proximity, based on how that would continue with manpower or possible future development, or it would be very likely that new housing would be recommended or desired in the area, is something to think about.
Yes.
And the biggest thing to me is schools and services.
Right.
How many kids is 160 houses going to bring?
Right.
Yeah, that's what
And
I kind of wrote down too.
I don't think the school can handle it, and it's not necessarily something for us to worry about as the village, but they would end up having to build another school, or I don't think they can take on, but I don't know what the numbers are for 160 houses, what the
No, I think
amount
that's a
of
good
kids would
question, and it's probably worth just follow-up conversation with the schools. When you look at national averages, and these are just averages, the national averages are going down. The average used to be 2.2 kids per family, but I think like the city of Dublin and a lot of the surrounding communities, their growth projections are all based on around 1.2 or 1.4 kids per household now. Some households still have 2 or 3 kids, and some households have none. It's just kind of the way that things are trending.
I think that the unfinished part of the school would have to become finished.
Oh,
I think
no
those.
doubt about it.
Right,
I
I
think
think it
that'd be a
would.
no-brainer. That would
Yeah.
be so.
I think they struggle now trying to get that, but that's what I wrote down also is the services and the school, if it could actually be supported. But
And not to get too detailed, water supply, that type of stuff, not an issue.
The schools are a tough one because
The school would
they
be.
rely on property taxes.
They
and
do.
if they don't get additional property taxes,
Right.
then they can't grow. And they can only, it's kind of like the village, they can only keep going back for levies, for so many
So many
times
times.
until it just doesn't become effective. So it's a kind of a chicken and an egg scenario, and it's always very difficult to deal with. And people are very passionate about schools, and
Are there
we
any other
recognize that.
any other comments? Any other questions or comments for Gary?
I'd be interested in hearing more too.
I mean, I'd be happy to come back and schedule a longer session if you wanted to talk more detail about some of these things. I'll send some information. You guys can take a look at it, and
Why don't we do that?
yeah,
Yeah.
we can.
Send some information, kind of start looking at some
Tim, what
stuff.
about a special meeting?
We could ultimately do a special meeting that would be just devoted to your time,
Yeah.
which it seems like the interest is here. I know I'm interested, and I've told you that all along. I don't know where that interest is going to go, but at least a discussion, more discussion.
Hey, we can keep it, very informal. Like I said, we could just like this. We could just have a conversation about what some of your thoughts are and how we could make it work. I'm sure it's still a challenging environment. We're respectful of that. If there is, an opportunity to do something here that makes sense for everybody, and can make sense for, a development standpoint too, we're definitely happy to explore it. If the timing's not right, I think that's okay too. We really had no expectations kind of coming into this evening. We just really wanted to see, where the conversation led.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your
Appreciate
time.
everybody's time.
Thank you very much.
We'll have a park available.
Yeah.
We've got the recreation
That's right.
part going. Yeah. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Now, if I can make the drive home without getting rained on.
Yeah. Good luck.
I don't know how fast.
Yep.
Put your chair back.
So I'm going to go into communications, and I have another about Saturday. Thank you. 99 didn't quite make it. 99 years of age. Now, I remember back in the 70s running squad with her son, Danny Wade. So that's when I first met Charlotte, was through Danny. But Charlotte was the very first Citizen of the Year in 1993 for the Village of Enon. And she was quite a lady. She was just a lovely person. So our condolences to her family as well. I have a couple other items of announcement here. We do have a hearing before our next meeting on the 12th, and that will be for the lot split that was approved by the Planning Commission for the Berry property there on South Senior Street. We do have another Planning Commission meeting coming up, and that will be on March 19th at 4 o'clock here at the Government Center. And we have received a request for rezoning from Walter and Sherry Adkins for the property located at 307 Coronado Trail. So again, that'll be Tuesday, March 19th at 4 p.m. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to staff reports. Kevin, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you, Council. Residents. Number one on my agenda, well number 4 update. We had an issue with well number 4, probably about a week ago, week and a half ago, that water was kind of leaching back into the water table. Couldn't find it. Thought there was, maybe a leak in the well or something. Did some testing. Jason did some good testing and investigative work, and come to find out that the check valve down in the well wasn't working properly. So we had Boone Water come in, pull the well pump, fix the check valve, fairly painless. As it was down and tore down, Jason and I discussed about possibly just going ahead and getting that well cleaned while it was down, because they were a third of the way, had everything tore apart. And we were planning on cleaning one well this year anyhow, not particularly well number 4, but so we kind of made a professional decision while they're here, mobilized, everything's tore down. Let's go ahead and clean that one. That will be done. So that cost to clean the well was just right under $20,000, $19,827. plus, that'll include that check valve replacement.
That was
stuff.
that included 5,000 for the check
Yeah,
valve.
yeah.
So everything under
Everything
20.
will be,
Okay.
yep. So we went ahead and did that. They will be done cleaning that either at the end of this week or Monday or Tuesday. They'll be.
When did they
putting that
start
up.
on that, Kevin? I'm sorry.
The
cleaning
the
part?
cleaning, the let's see, probably on Thursday. I think
Oh,
it was.
last week.
Yeah,
Okay.
last week. Yeah.
Okay, good deal.
So I wanted to bring you up to date on that. The new excavator that we will be leasing, I got a word from Nancy at West Banco today to stop in on Thursday morning to sign the paperwork for that lease agreement. The excavator is ready to be picked up. So I'd made contact with Columbus Equipment and told them that, if we can pick it up, maybe on Friday or wait till Monday, whatever. So we'll be having that new piece of equipment.
Kevin, do you guys have to have training? Is there new training or something with that?
They'll Columbus Equipment. Well, I'll take the guys
They'll
over
come out.
there and we'll
Okay.
train and and then we'll Jason get familiar with it. He's our backhoe operator, so I trust that it'll come easy to him. But we'll get training on him, Jamie, Doug. Just
And you'll be in there too.
and I'll be in there too.
Oh,
I
yeah.
want to
I
run
know
that
you will.
thing, so yeah, it's little enough where I can run it. So, Wayne and Jamie will be finishing up the GIS. They were at West Enon Estates. They had a couple hundred to do, so possibly by Friday they'll be done with the total GIS, weather permitting, and then we can start inputting that data of all that information into our system. So. The Eagle Scout, Olivia, our Eagle Scout project of moving this flagpole and adding 2 additional flagpoles out front. She's going to put the project together to do a formal presentation. I've been kind of emailing her back and forth. She's had some questions and stuff. So I told her the best thing to do is put like a formal presentation, come to council, present it electronically, paper, however she wants to do it. So I kind of expect that to happen within the next few weeks, probably the next few meetings, to get her scheduled in here to do that.
And she is going to need a little help funding wise.
Yeah.
So just kind of a heads up with that. And we've
You
kind
know,
of put
as
that
the
back
way-
on her.
As the way prices are and everything like
And,
that.
and we've done it for other projects, but yeah.
Let's see here. The blood drive was another great success. The results from February 21st, there was 31 people registered, 24 units collected. That was 88% of their goal, which they said will save 72 lives. So that's another great success. Another kudos to the village of Enon. So the blood drive, the next blood drive is Wednesday, April 24th. Wednesday, April 24th, 12:30 to 6:30. Get on donortime.com if anybody's interested in donating some blood. And let's see. Remember, the time change is March 10th. So remember to spring forward. There you go.
Yep, spring forward.
Yeah.
I think that's all I have for now.
Questions for our administrator?
I have a question. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The property there on Harrison at South Xenia, they were talking about a brewery. I noticed there's a lot of construction going over there. Is that what they're doing, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Was that the plan? Someone asked me about that. Was that the plan all along to tear that completely down and rebuild? Okay.
He's using some of the
He's
timber.
going to use that for the new building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did it have a basement?
I'd seen that today. I think it's just kind of a
did
cellar.
have a basement, like a cellar or
Yeah.
something.
Right.
Yeah, but he was going to reuse
The
some of
wood
the
beams
timbers.
were pretty cool. Did you
Save them,
stop
took
in?
them all down, and
Yeah, the timber
and-
inside was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and incorporate that into some open timbers on the new. Yeah.
Cool.
So
Any other questions? Thanks, Kevin. Chief, I'll turn it over to you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and residents. Earlier this month, the Attorney General, earlier in 2023, they put a task force together called the Blue Ribbon Task Force, and what that was consisted of representative for law enforcement in the area, our District 4 one of our District 4 rep at the time. He's no longer our District 4 rep now. He's actually, he's got an office right there with the OACP, Kurt Holthausrum, the chief of Vandalia PD. He was one of the ones in there. And I remember talking about this, but they were looking at some of the challenges that law enforcement face for the academies where they're held, kind of just a curriculum update. And anyways, they put this task force together, and over the course of a couple months, they took everybody's input, and they just did a release earlier this or late last week where they made some recommendations to improve the curriculum in the police academies, and also just kind of move law enforcement forward into the next betterment. And I just wanted to share some of those recommendations for you because I know I talked to other instructors and other law enforcement, and we feel like this is stuff that we've been saying for a while, so it was kind of nice to hear some of this come out. But they wanted to they recommend, they have like 8 or 10 recommendations. They want to remove 72 hours from a curriculum, which is 740 hours currently, and they want to replace that with things like, for example, and I won't get too carried away on this, but right now in the academy block, they go to 40 hours for the NHTSA speed measuring, and you learn I'm an instructor in it too. You learn the ins and outs of these little radars and lidars, and honestly, some of the stuff we don't necessarily feel that just the entry-level officer needs to know. That these devices are bought. We have the calibrations checked. So I know that was some of the stuff they chose to move out, but they wanted to work on some of the concerns that are posed toward law enforcement today, like, for example, communication with some of the the newer officers. Some of them, it's perceived that you can have a better conversation with them via a text message than you can just sitting across from them. So they want to implement some interpersonal communication to kind of remediate some of that. And then they want to, some of the critical decision making, and then instead of having a scenario where you're, subduing a subject by physical force, but then after that, what's next? For example, rendering medical aid, and then a traffic stop turns into a barricaded suspect, turns into an active shooter. So they've seen all that, and they've taken some of the community's input and law enforcement input, and they've made these recommendations, and I think they're good. And one other thing that I was really happy to hear was, right now, if you went and pulled every one of our officers' certificates from OPATA, they would all say that you graduated from the Basic Peace Officer Academy and you're now a peace officer. But you take somebody that has one of those and they've had it for 6 months versus maybe somebody like myself that's had it a little longer, why at face value, we're all the same on paper. So in other fields like nursing, for example, they can get different levels of RN, right? And the states looked at that and they're recommending that they take that certification and they have that advanced levels of certification. So as you progress through the years and you get a little experience, you go more from that basic certification to more of a mid-level advanced, like up to whatever. So I thought that was great. And then, of course, virtual reality training, which nowadays we didn't have, 10, 15 years ago. I know Edison just got a grant and they got one, and I was lucky enough to be that guinea pig on it. And that's pretty realistic. Staying on top of a 5-story building, look over an edge, and you got that thing on your head, and it's real. So it's pretty neat. So I know that they're moving forward to that. They sounds like they're going to continue with the CPT, the continued professional training credits that we're already required to do. They're looking at the curriculum, making sure that it's current, and we're trying to attract more people to this profession, and I think they're on the right path. So I'm glad the Attorney General and that task force looked into that, and I just wanted to kind of share that with you folks, how that could affect our agency. Also, they were looking at doing the firearms training rather than just, engaging a paper target down at the end, putting in some critical thinking into it and having some discussions on, the use of force and things of that, and just kind of intermingling it all. I think that's great. So for us, one, I think that'll offer some more scenario-based type training, because you have more minds putting together some curriculum, kind of like they do in the fire and EMS and stuff like that. And it'll allow our officers, obviously, the more people you have putting that stuff together, the better training that you're going to get. So I think the state of Ohio did a really good job moving forward in that, and I can't wait to see what they finish doing with it. Outside of that, we had there was several car thefts and stuff over the last couple of weeks outside of the municipality. So I want to still encourage our citizens, if they see something suspicious, please call us. We didn't have any inside of the village, but that is an uptick. Earlier today, I was down in Dayton at a meeting at the task force meeting, and they had a pursuit come out of Dayton into Fairborn and then into Huber Heights. That is a very popular thing. I think it's getting a lot of attention. I know the Department of Homeland Security and other agencies are starting to try to help law enforcement so we can prevent that. But I just want to remind the residents to, maybe it's a good time, roughly 9 o'clock or whatever time you choose in the evening, to double check, make sure your vehicles are locked, make sure your property's locked up. And again, if it doesn't fit your neighborhood and it kind of looks out of place, give us a call and ask for a check. Nothing wrong with having a marked unit drive down your street, and all of our officers are trying to do their best to look at it. So if you see an increased level of, say, traffic stops more for minor equipment violations or something, that's just us doing our extra job trying to identify who's here. One, it's a nice reminder to let you know that you have that out, but it also gives us the opportunity to see who's driving through our community and just make sure we can kind of keep that crime pushed out. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Chief. Questions for our chief?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Let's go into committee reports. And just real quick, we had our Records Commission meeting right before our council meeting, and that satisfies our obligation to do that twice a year. And out of that meeting, I will announce that, and it's a little ahead of time, but we've already got set up for September 17th, and that's a Tuesday from 4:30 to 6 o'clock. We'll have, in conjunction with Mad River Township trustees again, so we appreciate their cooperation. $300 for the evening, and we will split that cost with the township. Again, that's Tuesday, September 17th from 4:30 to 6. That always is a huge turnout. The response from our citizens is always great, and it gives us the opportunity to rid of records that are no longer useful to the village. Mr. Hanna, I'll turn it over to you for old business.
Very briefly, we plan on having the report back from MSP any day. They've reached out to us twice in the past week to say that they are trying to get that together, that the state budget request for funding that we discussed, to try to get that back to us ASAP. So they are currently working on it. We have tried to reach out to Senator Hackett again to make sure that they know that we're appreciative of what they did, and that we can we'll be forwarding that to them very shortly. There was one question about MSP being able to do construction work. Basically, they are the design group and the engineers who would do that. And what they would do is they put a request for funding or a request for bids out based off of the projection and the report that's going to come to us respectfully. That's it.
We should have a meeting scheduled by the end of this week, but probably sometime in March, with the senator to review that application. So we'll sit down with him and try to get his support on it.
I think April 8th the deadline to have that in there, but
Yes.
the earlier the better. So as soon as we get that, then we'll be.
It could actually be submitted, and then it could be reviewed with him. The copy could be reviewed. So,
Thank you.
So that there was an article in the Springfield News Sun earlier, or maybe last week, into last week, for the Priority Development and Advocacy Committee, the PDAC. Should we, after reading it, it sounded like we probably need to try to get involved with
Missed the
that,
boat.
get the project in front of all of those people.
And also about the Dayton Development Corporation. I think that was who was the head organization off of that. But I read the same thing, Jeremy, and I thought we've missed out on an opportunity, or at least we're behind on an opportunity.
I've never heard of them.
I
That was the
hadn't
first I'd heard
either. I
of
had
them.
no clue.
Downtown Dayton Commission, or the,
The PDAC, I'd never.
Yeah,
heard
I'd
of.
never heard of it.
it's it'll be interesting once we get the bid back from MSP as far as what we can expect for the project itself, as far as where we're going to go with it and how we can go with it, and ideally we'll receive some funding, but at some point, we're going to have to discuss what we're going to be doing or what we're not going to be doing with the park.
Thanks, Rick. Last item that we have is a resolution for services for the annexation of the property we're talking about. This would be Resolution 2024-02, a resolution adopting a statement of services for proposed annexation of approximately 60 acres from Mad River Township to the village of Enon, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. This is a requirement. This was sent over by Paul Cavanaugh, and Kevin kind of tweaked it. But per the expedited annexation process, we have to say, hey, we're going to provide these services, and they're listed: water, zoning, police, snow removal. And so I'm asking for council's approval on the passage tonight so I can get that back to Mr. Cavanaugh.
I'll move that we waive the 3 reading rule.
I'll second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Avery,
Yes.
Mr. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Least,
Yes.
Mrs. Sweet,
Yes.
Mr. Baird,
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Now I'd entertain a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2024-02.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Least,
Yes.
Mrs. Sweet,
Yes.
Mr. Baird,
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker, Mr. Avery.
Thank you. I'll get that signed and get it over to Paul Cavanaugh. Comments from the public? Public.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned.
6:58.
Thank you all for coming.